We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day. It is a beautiful day in sunny Nooga, Tennessee. I'm Keon Rose. You are listening to Clutch with Keon Rose, the first local sports show on in the Chattanooga area. And let me tell you. Let me tell you. The first off, wild, aimless speculation that is the media. Like I hear things in the media and I cringe sometimes because we can't let things just be what they are. As soon as something begins to maybe possibly happen, we don't take time to understand the story before we just start analyzing the story to death, and then we sort of correct on the fly. It's sort of like the release of modern video games. So you have a lot of games that have problems that get released, and then they get patched later. So you end up with games that aren't fully finished being designed, and that, of course, comes from the pressure of having to release that game at the time that you said you would release it. If you said you were going to release it in October and you're not done with it in October, nobody wants to wait past October for the game. They start getting mad, so you just release the game and then send out updates later to fix it, which is terrible for all the people that had to shell out $60 for a game that's not finished. And we do this with our news stories. The pressure to just put the news story out there is so high that we put the story out there and then we just fix it after the fact. And I mean, that level of inaccuracy and inefficiency, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's terrible for everybody involved. If you lose your credibility as the media by rushing stories out there, you lose information as a person who is consuming the media. You want to know what's happening and you don't know accurately what's happening, especially when a story first starts unfolding. We're not being inaccurate because we don't know as much as we think we know. Like we're not being inaccurate because of that, which is understandable. We're being inaccurate because we're not even trying to get the story straight. As soon as we get information, we don't verify, we don't fact check, we don't confirm. We just spit the story out. We just regurgitate information and analysis as soon as we get it. Makes no sense. And so LSU has lost to Ole Miss, and everybody is up in arms and panicking. Is Les Miles going to continue to be the coach at LSU? This is the wild, aimless speculation that has been flying around since LSU lost on Saturday. That LSU went from 3 weeks ago, and then that's an incredible turnaround too. LSU went from 3 weeks ago being number 2 in the nation. The College Football Playoff Committee released their rankings. LSU was number 2 after Clemson. And LSU has fallen off a cliff. They've gone to complete oblivion. We can't find LSU on a map. And of course, their head coach, Les Miles, is all of a sudden on the chopping block. And you just start to hear rumors out of LSU. Is LSU going to fire Les Miles? Les Miles is going to have a press conference that's going to be aired on ESPN in about 20 minutes. And we don't know. We don't have any proof or evidence that this means that he's going to be fired. We're ignoring the fact that it would be incredibly short-sighted of LSU to fire Les Miles. We're just ignoring all of these things and jumping straight to who's going to replace Les Miles. Should he be fired? And I've seen all of this analysis, and I've talked to some fans online, and like the issue with this situation with LSU is that people are, fed up with underachieving. But Les Miles has been at LSU for 11 years, and he's done a good job with that school and with that team. So I don't understand necessarily how and why it is that we have this wild speculation. It's not like Les Miles is some scrub coach, right? Like he's been a good coach. Now, to be fair, LSU has been average ever since that game against Alabama, that national title game against Alabama, where Alabama whooped them, right? Just a woodshed beating, just absolutely whooped up on those Tigers. And then ever since then, LSU's been average. I mean, they've had some 5-3, 4-4 conference seasons. Like it's been average, like completely average. And I don't know if that's the reason for wanting Les Miles out. He does have a predictable offense. And these are the gripes and the complaints about Les Miles. The offense is predictable. He hasn't done a great job of developing a quarterback. Either he's not good at finding a quarterback that can play that position, or the quarterbacks that he does find aren't being developed properly. And either way, that's a problem. So, I understand the case for being fed up with Les Miles, but he's an incredible coach. To me, and you're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I'm talking about the speculation that Les Miles might no longer be the head coach of LSU. And while that may or may not be true, we don't really have any evidence of that. And the speculation that's wild and flying around everywhere, and the rumors that there are boosters that are willing to buy out Les Miles' contract so that the team could move on and find a new coach. Like, all of this speculation is not all of the speculation, but most of the speculation is baseless. And I think that we should just hold it a little bit. And then, as I say that, I get into the mindset of why this story is so interesting and why the speculation would occur. The speculation, of course, occurs because it's a big name coach. It's a big name school in the SEC, which is arguably the best conference, and if not the toughest. And Les Miles has been such a fixture at LSU for the last 11 years, and he's been so good. Weird, bit crazy, but good. And all of a sudden, it just seems like in a span of 3 weeks. Because let's talk about it. Let's reason with this here. We were not talking about running Les Miles out of LSU at the beginning of this season. If you were looking at head coaches who were on the chopping block, who were on the hot seat at the beginning of this season, Les Miles wasn't one of those coaches. Especially in the SEC, you're looking at Derek Mason and Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt's got an amazing defense, but they can't score points. And if Derek Mason doesn't figure out how to score points in Vanderbilt, he's about to be gone. Butch Jones, his seat got a little toasty, and if we don't see a turnaround from the Vols starting next season, just at least see them begin to dominate games where they're expected to win, dominate games where they're not expected to win. Like they've got to make that leap. There's another level that the Volunteers aren't at. They're at the tier where they beat the teams that you expect them to beat, and they put up a fight against the teams that you expect them to put up a fight against, but they're not winning against teams that are supposed to be better than them. And they lose games late. That's a team that's average. The Tennessee Volunteers, despite recruiting very well, they're average. And so that's the ultimate issue there with them. And Butch Jones needs to make that team above average. If you recruit above average talent, you need to start playing above average. They're not playing above average. So you saw some guys, their seats were a little warm. Les Miles wasn't one of those guys. You thought Les Miles was one of those guys? He wasn't one of those guys. And 3 weeks ago, they were number 2 in the nation. What happened? Like, I get 3 losses, and they're not great losses. The Alabama loss is particularly crushing because of how poorly Leonard Fournette played, and we were talking about him just being out of the Heisman race just all of a sudden, even though Brennan Harris hasn't played badly in the last few weeks, and Leonard Fournette has had back-to-back 200-yard rushing games. Okay? That's huge. It's not like the offense or the team has stopped producing, but they're still not winning And the thing is, LSU's been hovering around average for a while themselves, and average isn't going to cut it. Les Miles bought himself some time, but I mean, this is season 4 now of just average LSU. And I think that people are becoming fed up with it, but I don't think that having a team that was number 2 in the nation at one point and then dropping out of that ought to put you on the chopping block. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm Keon Rose, and starting tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m., we've got The Herd with Colin Cowherd. We've got it at noon, and then we've got it again at 6 to 9. The Herd with Colin Cowherd. He's moved over to Fox Sports. His new show is cool. It's pretty amazing. I enjoy the show, and that kind of deep level analysis there that you get out of Colin. He talks about college football a lot. Very, very knowledgeable. That's The Herd with Colin Cowherd, starting at noon and from 6 to 9 p.m. here on Hot News Talk Radio. I'm talking about LSU. I'm talking about LSU specifically. I'm talking about Les Miles and the rumors and the talk and the scuttlebutt around the sporting world about the status of Les Miles and his coaching job. We don't know what LSU has in store. I think that it would be unwise and incredibly foolish to fire Les Miles and not have another person lined up that you think can do better than that. And I don't know how many of those guys are floating around. Okay? Because here's the thing. And I have this philosophy for every sport that's got a coach. That you just have a person who manages the team and that's their job. If you fire that guy, do you have someone in mind to replace him with who is better? Someone or some people in mind? Because it may even be foolish to have someone in mind and then they tell you no. You saw with the Cleveland Browns a few years ago, they ended up with Mike Pettin, but their first option was Chip Kelly. And Chip Kelly basically just said, no, I'm not coaching the Cleveland Browns. And then they went back to square one because they didn't have another person in mind. It's unwise to fire Les Miles if you don't think you have someone better than Les Miles in mind. Like literally an Urban Meyer or a Chip Kelly type person with that level of gravitas and weight, because I don't know who you find out there right now that's better than Les Miles. I don't. He's a great coach. He's had trouble developing quarterbacks. He's had trouble with making an offense that isn't wholly predictable. And I think that this year having Leonard Fournette really disguised a lot of those weaknesses, because Leonard Fournette is a monster and a beast, and he's incredible. And so you can just kind of base your game around the run and then not have to worry so much about everything else. The problem is when you run into a team like Alabama, who is capable of out-muscling you, out-strengthening you, and is just superior in general physically, or at least they're better than the opponents that you were playing. The LSU played a few opponents that weren't able to make them look weak physically. LSU, more often than not, more physical than the team they're playing against. More often than not. And then they played Alabama, and Alabama said, no, we're big, and we're strong, and we're fast too. And then they showed them. They just out-muscled LSU. And ever since then, LSU's been in a tailspin, the kind of funk that I don't know how you get out of that. And now, Les Miles is on the chopping block. There's going to be a press conference with him on ESPN2 at 1:30, and I'll try and see what information we can pull from there. I'm not going to be able to just play the feed or anything, but I will see what information we can pull from there, because it's an interesting story. 3 weeks ago, this school was the number 2 school in the nation. Just 3 weeks ago. What happened? It's not like he's lost accountability. But the thing is, there's a special team meeting that's coming up today also with LSU that he's going to have with the team. And we see things like that, and we're like, let the wild and aimless speculation begin. let's try and gather some facts first. Let's try and gather some information first. Yeah, like we can talk about where he's going to wind up next, but let's try and get some information first before we just start jumping to conclusions. This here program is brought to you by Rick Davis, Golden Diamonds. Do you need Christmas gifts? Do you? Because you can find designer jewelry and other gifts at Rick Davis Golden Diamonds for 50, 60, and even 70% off. And if you need a little Christmas money, a little shopping money for the kids, nephews, nieces, you can sell your gold, silver, bracelets, rings, diamonds, and jewelry. Rick Davis will appraise them and pay you the cash himself. Cash, cash, cash. Get some today at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. This is Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. And we'll be talking about the Iron Bowl, a little bit more or less miles, and some Tennessee football next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Celebrate the holidays with cheer and basement bargain prices at One Stop Package in the Sunrise Market Center, Sunny Daisy. The brand new One Stop Package beverage store on Old Dayton Pike, just north of the Thrasher Light, with the best prices in town. Enjoy the lowest prices on beer, wine, liquor, and soft drinks. Hey, mention you heard this ad on Hot News Talk Radio and get 5% off your purchase. That's right. Mention you heard this on the radio and you'll get 5% off. The brand new One Stop Package beverage store in Sunny Daisy. Their prices are always the lowest prices in town. The lowest prices you'll find in the finest of adult beverages. The brand new One Stop Package in South Sunny Daisy at the Sunrise Market, featuring great prices on gas, bread, and milk. The Sunrise Market just across from Charlie's in Sunny Daisy. And remember, always drink responsibly.
Get 10% off every case of wine.
I love my Flex loan from Advance Financial. I needed cash, I needed it fast, and I didn't want to get a payday loan. My Flex loan from Advance Financial is not a payday loan. It's a line of credit. I only pay for the cash I need, and I only pay for the time that I need it. There's no lump sum payment. My Advance Financial Flex loan is an open line of credit, and I can get cash anytime I need it.
Visit one of our 24/7 locations and get the cash you need today. Advance Financial. Welcome.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
President Obama makes Jimmy Carter look like Napoleon Bonaparte. We have a president that leads from behind, and when America doesn't lead, bad things happen.
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. My guest this week is former Congressman from Ohio, Dennis Kucinich, who says a Department of Defense is not enough. The United States needs a Department of Peace, which is committed to avoiding wars. Is Kucinich onto something? Find out this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Expect lots of sunshine out there through the afternoon, slowly warming up a little, highs 50 to 53. Tonight, clear, cold, and frosty again, lows near 30. For Tuesday, the warming trend picks up by the afternoon with lots of sun, highs upper 50s, around 60 on Wednesday. Check out Hum by Verizon. Want a smarter, safer car? Just plug in Hum by Verizon and you instantly get vehicle diagnostics and pinpoint roadside and emergency assistance. Learn more at hum.com. And I'm Swarsheen 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You know what happened this weekend? Mr. Judd and I do our picks every Thursday about the games that are happening on Saturday, and I got to tell you something. I'm not the guy that I don't toot my own horn very often. But, man, I was on fire last week. Oh, my goodness, I was on fire. Look at this. Look at it. Going through the picks here. Okay, we had LSU and Ole Miss. Mr. Judd and I got that wrong. Okay, we all thought LSU was going to win that one, and the reason why we're talking about Les Miles to open the show is because we both got that one very wrong, and LSU didn't just lose. Ole Miss scorches them. They go down in flames, and when you have Leonard Fournette, who has basically been in the Heisman conversation since week 1, there's no excuse for performing the way that they did against Ole Miss, who is a team themselves in something of a tailspin. So that's pretty interesting. There, Ole Miss beats LSU 38-17, and the Tigers never looked really in it. But you get a 324-yard game out of Brandon Harris. He did throw 2 interceptions, but it still seems odd to me, anyway, that you have 324 yards out of Brandon Harris. You get 25 yards or 25 attempts for 108 yards from Leonard Fournette, and you kind of just lay an egg against Ole Miss. It's not like Ole Miss has been scorching people this season. They started off that way, and then they just sort of lost their way. So I don't know. But that game didn't go the way that we thought it was going to go. But ever since then, I picked Tennessee to beat Missouri, picked Mississippi State to cover against Arkansas, and they beat Arkansas 51-50 in yet another thrilling game. Like, I think that the advice that I ought to give you now is just watch games that Arkansas is in. That the Hogs just find themselves in these close, thrilling games, regardless of which direction it goes for them. But I picked Mississippi State to cover. They did. Texas Tech plays Texas on Thursday after a Thanksgiving game there for Texas. As per usual, I picked Baylor to beat Oklahoma State. TCU to beat Oklahoma. Mr. Judd got that one wrong. Or got that one correct. Oklahoma beat TCU. But then I picked Oregon, Dr. Danielle Mitchell's Oregon Ducks to beat USC. And they did by a whole lot more than we thought they would. And both Mr. Judd and I had Boston College over Notre Dame, or to covering against Notre Dame. And they did. So, look, I'm feeling really good right now. That's my point. I'm feeling real good. That weekend there, that's probably one of the better picking weekends that we have had in a very, very long time. In quite some time. And that's been fun and a lot less confusing than what's going on with LSU, and a lot less confusing than what's been going on with the FCS schools, because I told you last week, none of these games are going to be interesting. The FCS schools are smaller schools. They're less talented schools. And the SEC mailed it in last week, just played a bunch of FCS schools. And I thought those games weren't going to be close, because they're not. They're usually not close. They're usually never close. Last week, Alabama plays Charleston Southern, and Charleston Southern just gets stomped. Like, first, if I tell you that Nick Saban is just full of it, he's saying we got to take this game seriously. 56-6, Alabama beats Charleston Southern. Horrible football game, as expected. Okay, that's just terrible football. Nobody wants to see terrible football. That's bad football. But these other schools, those things got a little interesting. Florida beats Florida Atlantic 20-14 in overtime. They didn't score until the third quarter against Florida Atlantic, the Owls of Florida Atlantic. This is not good. Florida's winning games, and they are so hideously winning these games, Florida might just lose their way out of this playoff just with wins. I've never seen that before, where you have an opportunity to be in the college football playoff, and even winning, you're losing ground because your wins are so hideous and so ugly against teams you're supposed to be dominating. I mean, the way they played against Vanderbilt recently, and then the way they played against Florida Atlantic last weekend, wow. Florida looks strugglicious. The struggle is real there. That is an actual uphill fight for them every game against an FCS school, no less. Florida Atlantic? Gee whiz. I'm getting off the Florida bandwagon. I'm a very faithful, loyal person. If I hop on a bandwagon, as my brother once told me, I stay on the bandwagon until the wheels fall off the cart and the horse dies. I usually stick around. I can't stick with this Florida team. There's nothing good happening here. Are you serious? You beat Florida Atlantic 20-14. And I understand you don't have Will Greer, but Kelvin Taylor, 98 yards and a touchdown. That's disappointing. That's disappointing. Okay? And you're Florida. What are you doing, man? Treon Harris looked all right, but he looked average against Florida Atlantic. And I don't know what to say. Like, props to Florida Atlantic for showing up to play to that game, because clearly the Gators didn't. And the Gators are going to be running into Florida State very soon. And I don't see any way that they're winning that game next week, because they've looked so bad against Vanderbilt and Florida Atlantic. Now, don't sleep on Vanderbilt's defense. That's a real defense there. But that offense doesn't score any points. It's not a good offense. Like, you ought to have enough opportunities to win that game, because they can't keep their defense off the field. Like, those guys just wear down, even though statistically they're one of the top defenses in the league. So I don't know what to tell you about Florida. They look about as ugly winning as anybody ever has. Like, they're wins that feel like losses. Those wins don't feel like wins. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We talked last week about the SEC mailing it in, playing terrible football against terrible schools, small schools, and in their conferences, FCS schools, and Florida just struggled against Florida Atlantic. And it would be, it's if that was the outlier, this wouldn't be worth mentioning at all. It's not an outlier. Georgia played Georgia Southern and struggled, beating them 23-17 in overtime. Look, I understand this is not Georgia's best season. Okay, you had a lot of injuries. That Georgia was, to me, one of the schools to beat in the SEC East before the injuries. I get it. Okay, I do. You lose Nick Chubb, life gets real hard for you. Nick Chubb was another guy that was Heisman candidate talk worthy, except he got injured. So, he falls out of the conversation, obviously. And we're just looking at a team with depth here at the running back position. And Sony Michel stepped up for sure and had a 132-yard, one touchdown game. But against Georgia Southern, I didn't expect the game to look like this. This is just more ugly football. Like, this is just bad. It's just bad. Where do you start? Georgia scores in the first quarter and then doesn't score again until the third. And then they kick a field goal in the fourth and then score in overtime. What is happening? What is happening in the SEC right now? Because I'm confused. And again, if that were the outlier, this wouldn't be worth talking about, except South Carolina loses to Citadel. What? Now, I understand. Again, South Carolina, you lose against, you lose Spurrier. Okay, you're in the middle of a coaching change. Your culture's changing. You're the big brother of that state. You ought to be pounding the Citadel to death. No, you didn't. You lost to Citadel 23-22. And I'm confused because here are the passing stats for Citadel quarterback Dominique Allen for this game. 2 of 3 for 37 yards. No touchdowns. He completed 2 passes. 2 passes were completed for Citadel all game. And that resulted in a 23-22 victory over South Carolina. Statistically, how does that even happen? Meanwhile, South Carolina quarterback Perry Orth threw he attempted 43 passes. He was 28 of 43 for 367 passing yards. They lose the game. I don't understand football anymore. And I'm not saying that this is the thing that puts you on the verge of quitting, but understanding sports is kind of a large part of my job. And when things like this happen, I don't understand the point of it. I just start to see the futility of my existence, and I want to wither away and fall off a tree like a dying leaf, because I don't understand football anymore when the team that passes 2 of 3 for 37 yards, the school that passes, and also the tiny school in the Southern Conference, okay? Same conference that UTC plays in, okay? And UTC went down to Florida State and got pounded like a drum. What is happening in sports? SEC just struggled against FCS schools all weekend after I said that would be bad football, because 95.2% of the time, it is bad football. Okay, the numbers are there to back that up. It's not a made-up number. If one kind of school, which is the Power 5 conference schools, your Big 10, your Big 12, your Pac-12, your SEC, and your ACC, when those schools go a combined 295 victories against the FCS schools over a 4-year span, guess what? One is clearly better. We have like a large enough sample size to go, you know what? The Power 5 schools totally dominate those FCS schools, and maybe they shouldn't play them. And I understand that this is why you play the game out on the field, but like 295 times out of 310. Okay, and this past weekend, we had a loss to Citadel from South Carolina. Georgia almost lost to Georgia Southern, and Florida almost lost to Florida Atlantic in what must be the definition of backsliding into anything. That you can't necessarily tell Florida, hey, you guys shouldn't be ranked in the top 10, but Florida shouldn't be ranked anywhere near the top 10. They are allergic to scoring points. Ever since they've lost Will Grier, they've been allergic to scoring points. And I understand that if Florida wins out, they'll have as good a case as any to be in the top 4. I don't care if they win out now. I actually do not care. They looked dreadful against Florida Atlantic, and they looked dreadful against Vanderbilt, and it doesn't make any sense, and they shouldn't be anywhere near a college football playoff. Like, shouldn't be anywhere near it. I've never seen a team look so allergic to the end zone. Like, if you just walked into the end zone to score a touchdown, Gators would just start breaking out in hives. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Okay? Something has got to happen here so that my sanity can return. Schools that dominate FCS schools. Okay? I expect Florida to dominate Florida Atlantic. Georgia needs to dominate Georgia Southern. South Carolina needs to dominate Citadel. Especially when that quarterback, he goes 2 of 3 for 37 yards passing. To which you could say, well, Keon, that they scored enough points to win. How did that happen if he's only passing for 37 yards? Well, let me tell you. South Carolina allowed 2 100-yard rushers in that single game. Okay? 2 of them. Tyler Renew and Cam Jackson. combined for 3 touchdowns and 274 yards. Okay, these are problems. These are problems. Real problems. They completed 2 passes. They won the game. I've never seen that before at that level of football in my whole life. Not that I can recall easily. Not at all. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today as I lose my mind over what was a crazy weekend in college football, especially in the SEC, that shouldn't have been. You can call the number 800-8949. We'll be back with more talk next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm the type of guy that likes a big breakfast, a couple of eggs, bacon, and some gravy and biscuits. I get that at Wimpy's. I know they have specials at lunch every day. That includes a big meat and 3 menu. At night, I want some good comfort food. Maybe some smoked brisket, pulled barbecue, or ribs. They've got that too. Wimpy's the type of place where you can go in and have a good conversation, catch up what's going on in Saudi Daisy, and have some great food. That's why I go to Wimpy's. You know where it's at, on Dayton Boulevard, right across from City Hall. That's Wimpy's. Give them a call, 423-332-6201. Did you hear me? It's 332-6201. Wimpy's. They're even on Facebook at Wimpy's. I know your mouth is watering just like mine, so let's go to Wimpy's.
Celebrate the holidays with cheer and basement bargain prices at One Stop Package in the Sunrise Market Center, Sunny Daisy. The brand new One Stop Package beverage store on Old Dayton Pike, just north of the Thrasher Light, with the best prices in town. Enjoy the lowest prices on beer, wine, liquor, and soft drinks. Hey, mention you heard this ad on Hot News Talk Radio and get 5% off your purchase. That's right. Mention you heard this on the radio and you'll get 5% off. The brand new One Stop Package beverage store in Sunny Daisy. Their prices are always the lowest prices in town. The lowest prices you'll find in the finest of adult beverages. The brand new One Stop Package in South Sunny Daisy at the Sunrise Market, featuring great prices on gas, bread, and milk. The Sunrise Market just across from Charlie's in Sunny Daisy. And remember, always drink responsibly.
Get 10% off every case of wine.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
I want to get to this Iron Bowl talk, but here's the thing. Okay, that's going to be probably bigger news as we get closer to Saturday. My big issue with today is that now I'm trolling the internet for news on Les Miles. Like, I'm trying to find out what's happening with Les Miles. He had a press conference on ESPN. I'm in here, so obviously I haven't seen it yet. The press conference at 1:30. It was on ESPN2, might still be on ESPN2, concerning, I'm not sure what, but LSU fans lately have been fed up with Les Miles. The frustrating losing is starting to get to them. And I want to know how it is that a guy who was coaching a team that was number 2 in the nation 3 weeks ago is now on the chopping block, trying to run Les Miles out of town. How does that happen? Because I don't have an answer for that. And I'm sure there's situations where this happens, where a coach who has been relatively successful gets run out of town because of disappointing losses. My question is, how often does that actually work out for you? We're seeing something like that in the NBA where that's worked out, where the Golden State Warriors fire Mark Jackson because the playoff losses are very disappointing, and they end up hiring Steve Kerr, winning a championship, and starting this season, they're still undefeated. 14 games in, they haven't lost a game yet. And it hasn't been close, some of those games that they've been winning. They've just been blowing out everyone, regardless of talent and scale. They're just that good. When was the last time things worked out like that? I suppose every time Auburn fires a coach, that's one way. But they fire their coaches all the time. Like, you win your championship with Auburn, they put up with you for as long as they can put up with you, then they move on to the next guy, and he comes in and wins the championship. I don't know why it works that way. They just do it. But very rarely, though, I feel like rarely, that is not something that happens where a guy is coaching, he's competent, he's good, he goes through some disappointing seasons, and then everybody wants to run him out of town. He gets run out of town, and the person who replaces him is not only better, but goes to a championship. I feel like that doesn't happen very often. I could be wrong. See, the University of Texas, which I know that very all too familiar with everything that's happening over there. Charlie Strong hasn't been able to turn that program around just yet. And he replaced the middling Mac Brown, who Mac was running the Longhorns into the ground personally. Just offense was redundant and slow, was not with the times at all, could never get a quarterback to come to the team that was any good, which is weird because it's Texas. No school has more money than them. And they couldn't get anybody to come to the school. Jameis Winston was interested in going to Texas. Andrew Luck was interested. And they just passed up on all of those guys. You passed up on all those guys. And you end up not having a quarterback, which is unacceptable because, again, you're Texas. I feel like what Les Miles is in is not even at that scale. Les Miles is no Mac Brown. Okay? Just to be completely clear. Mac Brown is his own. He wins a national title, yes, on the back of Vince Young. And what an amazing performance they needed from him to even get that. And never really comes close again. And in fact, not only does he not get close again, you get the Colt McCoy years, and then after Colt, it was all downhill. There was not another quarterback ever anywhere near that caliber. It all fell off. And you're looking at LSU, and LSU is not fallen off. Again, Brandon Harris isn't the best quarterback of all time. And I don't think anyone's going to confuse him, not only for that, but no one's going to confuse him for even a really above average quarterback. But he's decent. There's no reason why, with Brandon Harris at the helm, you can't win more football games. And with Leonard Fournette in your backfield, why you're not really coming out on top. People are going to start to blame you, the head coach, because scheming and planning is all your job. That falls under your jurisdiction there, Jack. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose, brought to you by Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. There is a total store sale now. So if you need Christmas gifts, you want to get something for that special someone, some jewelry, there's a 50, 60, and 70% off sale on designer jewelry and gifts. And if you need cash for the holidays, just a little extra something to help you get some presents and gifts for the kids, the nieces, the nephews, the aunts, the uncles, never fear. You can get cash when you sell your gold, silver bracelets, rings, diamonds, and jewelry. Rick Davis will appraise your jewelry and pay you the cash himself. Cash, cash, cash. Get some today at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Auburn and Alabama next week in the Iron Bowl, which is as fun a time and as fun a week in sports as there ever is. And honestly, the hype train for that was supposed to begin segment 1. And instead, I'm talking about Les Miles. And also, the SEC just generally disappointing me. I'm standing here going, you guys are playing FCS schools that you've got to stoop down to play, and these schools fought back. Georgia Southern made life real difficult for Georgia. Florida Atlantic made life real difficult for Florida, and Florida's probably going to fall in the rankings because of that win. It is possible to have moral defeats. If you can have moral victories where you lose, but you lose with such effort that it feels like victory, it's possible to win with such lack of heart and such lack of skill that it feels like a loss. Florida against Florida Atlantic, that was a loss. Okay. The Florida Atlantic Owls were not having any of it, and they gave the Gators all they could handle.
It's unbelievable what those boys did.
Absolutely is.
What they did.
I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. Florida Atlantic against Florida, and Florida's going to go and play Florida State next week, and I'm going to just call it right now. That's a bloodbath. Seminoles are going to destroy the Gators. They look lost. The Gators do, and maybe they're just doing that thing where they play down to the level of their opponents. But I don't know. Florida Atlantic they were playing with a lot of heart, and Florida just looked lost, and they don't look like they know how to play offense anymore. And Florida Atlantic, pretty unbelievable.
It's unbelievable what those boys did. It's unbelievable what they did.
Thank you, Drunk Johnny Gomes. I just think that, look, at some point you got to give credit to the team that put up the fight, right? Like Florida Atlantic deserves all the credit for how hard they played. But Florida hasn't been good for weeks. And it's coming to a head right now. They haven't figured it out. And at quarterback, they really need to. And Florida State has been good so consistently this season. Yeah, good luck with that. I mean, the Seminoles aren't just going to stop you like Florida Atlantic was able to for about 3.5 quarters. They're going to put up points. The Seminoles are putting up points, and they're putting up a lot. And the Gators look lost to the point where, I mean, you're Tennessee Vols fan, and you're looking at Florida, and you're going, we lost to them? I mean, you did, and I know at the time they had Will Grier. Like, I get it. But the drop-off between Grier and Harris shouldn't be this far. Like, it shouldn't be this wide a gap at all. And it's not just a sort of wide gap. It's huge. Like, they look incompetent on offense. They look lost. It's unreal. You know, and we have to talk about that, because when they were doing it against Vanderbilt, when they were just dogging it against Vanderbilt and they didn't look very good, okay, it's at least very apparent to anybody watching Vanderbilt play football that they're very good at defense. The Commodores are very good at defense. Their problem is that they're so bad at offense that not only can they not score points, their offense can't even stay on the field, and their defense is out there all the time. I mean, get that team an offense, and Vanderbilt will be pretty good. Derek Mason's done a good job with that defense. It's just offensively, they just don't score points. So you see Florida just kind of dogging it against Vanderbilt, and you want to laugh at them and say, hey, what is the deal here? What's the deal? Why can't you score? But Vanderbilt's very good at defense. Okay, I get it. But Florida Atlantic? Not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. Completely unacceptable. I'm not having it. That's unacceptable. You cannot play against Florida Atlantic and look like that. You've got an opportunity to go to a college football playoff here. Like that was actually in the cards for you. And I have to think that Jim McElwain has got to be a little bit worried about this offense, at least a little bit, because it looks anemic, and you can't play that way and expect to move up in these rankings to have a shot. Like, I was talking to Bill Bender last week, Thursday, about it, and Bill said Florida's just got to win out. And they'll be fine. If they win out and they're able to beat Alabama, then they've got to be allowed in. My thing is, putting aside the fact that they're not going to be able to beat Alabama playing like this, I don't think that winning like this, they should be allowed anywhere near that conversation. These are bad wins. These are awful wins. They're wins that feel like losses.
I'm not having it.
Nobody's having it. They're terrible. They're terrible, terrible victories. Ugh. They're like the kind of victories that make you feel dirty. You just watch the game and then you need to go take a shower because you just feel gross. That and Georgia against Georgia Southern, which not having Nick Chubb is not an excuse for what that was. Like, I thought that this was going to be bad football, and it was, but it wasn't bad football for any of the reasons that I thought it was going to be. I expected the FCS school to play badly. That I expected because you're the smaller, less talented school. You basically got paid to have this bigger school come in and destroy you. That's what you paid. That's what they paid you for that. You're the easy school that they put on their schedule, and they give you money. They give you millions of dollars. That's how this works. And instead of the FCS school being the school that played badly, the Power 5 school is the school that played horrible, horrible football. Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina owe everybody that watched those games an apology. Like, I want to see a press release for that because my eyes were offended. My heart was offended by the football that I watched. That is so bad. Especially the South Carolina Citadel game, because neither of those schools played well. But again, South Carolina, you're bigger, you're stronger, you're faster. You've got more money to put into your athletic department. Your stadium's bigger. You're a bigger school. You're playing Citadel. You should run Citadel. Citadel beats you by a single point. How does that even happen? How's that game even close and in jeopardy in any way? When Citadel completed 2 passes for a grand total of 37 yards. This is bad football from South Carolina. You expect them to play bad football when they play against other SEC schools who are better than them because they've been regressing lately. You don't expect them to play bad football against Citadel. I was eating a sandwich when I was watching that game. I wanted to puke. What is that? I didn't even get to talk about the Iron Bowl. I just ranted because that was bad. It was bad football. Okay, it was terrible. And for not even the reasons that I expected it to be terrible. Like, it's not like both of those schools played great football and the game was close and they were just trading punches and it looked like 2 heavyweights in a ring, which it still shouldn't look like that because we're talking about Citadel, Georgia Southern, and Florida Atlantic. But at least if it looked like that, that would be acceptable. Instead, Florida, Georgia, and more specifically South Carolina looked puke-tastic in games that all 3 of them deserved to lose, but only South Carolina actually did. I don't understand what happened in Florida, but South Carolina, that's even more perplexing. 2 passes for 37 yards, and they beat you. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. Tune in tomorrow at noon and from 6 to 9 for The Herd with Colin Cowherd right here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and I'll see you in 23 hours.
Expect lots of sunshine out there through the afternoon. Slowly warming up a little. Highs 50 to 53. Tonight, clear, cold, and frosty again. Lows near 30. For Tuesday, the warming trend picks up by the afternoon with lots of sun. Highs up for 50.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
WSDT Sunny Daisy.